I'd like to reopen the regular meeting of the Bronxville Board of Trustees for May 9th, 2022. And we will start first with our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have a very, I think it's a very special, wonderful part of, to start our meeting, we're going to swear in Bill and my three colleagues who won their elections back in May. And because of COVID and just other things, we couldn't get all of us here together. So our Justice Nordal was kind enough to come tonight and do the swearing in for her fellow justice, and then trustees Helen Knapp and Mary Behrens. So I think I'll start. Why don't we start with Judge Prims? And if you like to come through the side. Yes, and thank you, Judge Nordal, for being here.
Anybody would like to get married?
Yeah.
Are you here?
Justice Prince, it is my pleasure to do this evening. Raise your right hand. And do you, Justice Prince, solemnly swear that you will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York? And that you will faithfully discharge your duties as a village justice in the village of Bronxville to the best of your ability, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay.
Solemnly swear.
Justice, would you like to say anything, Justice Prims? We're just glad to have you continue. So.
Well, thank you very much. No, it's been a great pleasure to serve for the last 4 years. They have been challenging, as they have been for all our citizens and all our public servants. Well, with COVID, the need to modify a lot of our court proceedings and procedures. And let's hope we can get back more to normal and have a very good 4 years.
Thank you.
May I suggest that maybe we have just a quick photo reenactment for the photographers here?
Maybe, yes. Yeah, Stephen is from the newspaper, so that's why. Thank you, Bill. Yes. Perfect. And, well, you know what, Steve? I think at the end, we'll do all these swearing in, and then we'll give you all the info. Yes, absolutely, Stephen. And next we have my colleague, Trustee Helen Knapp.
You can use this.
Trustee Knapp, would you like to say anything?
Well, it has been my honor and privilege to serve the village over the last 2 years. I so thoroughly enjoyed working with all my colleagues and all the people at Village Hall and in the community, and I'm really looking forward to the next 2 years.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual. Yeah. And now we have Trustee Mary Taylor Behrens. Mary, did you want to bring, I know you have some voters here that I know voted for you. Do you,
Voters as well, so thank you everybody for coming and supporting the three of us getting sworn in. And I reiterate what Trustee Knapp said, which is it's an honor and privilege to work on behalf of the village, a village that she and I both grew up in and have lived here many years. So it's our honor, and we look forward to the next 2 years of all the great things that we as a group can accomplish. Thank you.
do you want to bring your family up to have a family picture?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Great job, Natasha.
Thank you, Justice. Thank you. We so appreciate it. Congratulations to everybody.
Maybe we can get a picture of the four of us.
Yes, why don't we do
With
that?
Natasha.
Oh, Justice, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we get a picture?
That's a great
You
idea.
two and the two of us just together?
Yes, that's a great idea. Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah.
That's not very nice.
Oh, thank you, Justice Nordahl. Thank you. And you're all great colleagues, and it's nice to have a little formal recognition.
Thank you,
So,
thank you, Mayor.
Yes. Tonight we have two guests, so we're going to have our guests speak ahead of our normal mayor's, village administrator reports and business. And our first guest is Max Goldberg. Max, you can come to the podium. What is your formal title at the Eastchester Volunteer Ambulance Corps, or EVAC?
So my name is Max Goldberg. Thank you very much for having me, Mayor Marvin, and the rest of the board. My formal title is Deputy Chief and Vice President of Operations.
Okay. So would you just want to tell us, we kind of are doing sort of the state of affairs of all the different organizations that villagers depend on, are affected by. So if you could give us a kind of a state of EVAC and frankly, how we can help.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to, and thank you for the opportunity. So although we started in 1952 and became the sole 911 EMS provider for Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe, the last 2 years have really highlighted the importance of emergency services in our small town. We currently operate 4 ambulances and 2 SUVs. Those SUVs occupied by paramedics, the ambulances occupied by EMTs. We are a unique combination department. What that means is we have 150 volunteers, not at one time, that'd be an army of people. We have 150 volunteers and 42 paid employees, also not at one time. Our paid employee capacity is 7A to 3P. We have 2 paramedics, and then the rest of the 24/7, we have 1 paramedic. Then we operate a paid EMT Monday through Saturday, 7A to 3P. The rest of our staffing, which is 4 ambulances and 2 SUVs, is volunteer and done by the community members, which are staffed in-house when they're on shift. Our primary function is 911 emergent calls for emergency medical services in Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe. But due to the current state of affairs in Westchester County as well as the nation, we've been known to stem a little bit outwards when mutual aid to other communities is needed. Right now, and as always, my job function is not only operations, but is to raise funds for general operations and the viability of our core. As you know, we are not a part of the tax district, so we rely heavily on generous donations, and we also rely on medical insurance billing, which, as we all know through the billing process, that's not a guaranteed return. We see a return around 60%. So day in and day out, although we are non-for-profit, our budget is very tight and something that I'm constantly working on through social media platforms, public outreach, media outreach, and television, even commercials, which we did in 2022 and 2020. Commercials to say, hey, we're here, we are very vibrant in our operations, but we're here because of generous donations and billing, not because of any other source of income. So that's who we are. If you guys have any questions and about our operations or how we proceed further or where we go with the agency, I'm here for anything.
Where are your headquarters?
Our headquarters are 257 Main Street in Eastchester, a centrally located building that allows us to respond with equal time to the south end of Bronxville as well as the north end of Eastchester and Tuckahoe.
And do you receive any state grant? Do you apply and receive any state grants or federal grants? Are you a
Fantastic question. We do not receive any federal grants. We are trying to, for the first time, receive a small monetary grant from FEMA due to the increase in medical supply costs through COVID. But outside of that, we do not receive any federal grants. I'm currently in the grant process for a state grant because we need new SUVs, and that's just not in our budget to do so. So I'm going through a state grant right now to hope that goes through.
Couple questions. Did you raise enough money? I know you depend on your appeals.
Yes.
And my other question, just to kind of bring it home, how many volunteers in our town, and how many calls do you get in the village roughly a month? Just to give it, to bring it home.
Of course. So fantastic question. We have 150 volunteers. Our volunteer capacity on a daily average is between 8 to 12 in-house at a time, which is great staffing. That's about 4 ambulances or 4 plus, which would be, support crew and stuff like that. We vary in our call volume, especially over the past 3 years. When we started 2022, we're projected to have 6,000 calls. 2021, we got 3,000. 2020, we're at 2,900. So it's very, it's emergent. So if we have a higher commerce, higher pedestrian and vehicular traffic in the 3 towns, our call volume goes up. As people move up from the city, our call volume goes up. But we average in Bronxville, we average around, on a yearly, around 700, and then some years will be 900, 1,100. So it's around that number. It's just under a third of our general call volume, which
That's okay. And I just have one more question, and I'm sure my colleagues do. I saw the bill they passed in Albany that if you have a volunteer ambulance system, that your community can charge the person for you. How does that affect you? They just passed that, and I thought of our own EVAC.
So we're definitely looking into that, and we're trying to read a little bit more about it.
Me too.
Part of the bill, and again, we're looking into it further. Part of the bill is saying the minimum requirement for the district is just 1 ambulance. And I think that kind of more caters to other communities that are less populous and have less, merchants in town and storefront. So we definitely want to see that, look into that further and see about other sources of billing. But when it comes down to medical insurance, we do our in-house billing on that, and we hope for a nice return, but
Okay.
Oftentimes.
I just thought it sounded, when I read those bills passing, some have no bearing on the village, but when
Yeah.
I read that, I thought it might be, did you have, final question, how much, I know we did a second drive kind of together as a board of trustees. What's still do you have a shortfall? Like, what, did you hit your?
we sat around 78,000, which is absolutely fantastic. We were looking for the area of 110, but 78 is a great number that we didn't have any at the beginning of it.
Okay.
Just for you guys all to know, and a little fact, we were looking for 110,000 as we added a second paramedic. We usually operated with one form of advanced life support. Now we're operating with two to combat the increase in call volume in all the districts that we cover. Something that, when a time comes, you forget about evac until you need evac, and that's something that we want to be there when you need us every single time without delay. When we all know time is of the essence, especially if you're looking at a cardiac episode or anything of the sort. So we are looking for, down the road, and this is a discussion we can have at additional meetings and stuff like that, we are looking for other sources of guaranteed funding, especially as we look to upgrade our building, which was erected in 1988. However, we've vastly outgrown it. 1988, we were doing 1,500 calls, and now we're over 3,000. So it's different times. And unfortunately, we've now all come to see the possibility in surges of pandemics and increased need. And I know you said last question. As many questions as you guys want, I'm here for.
Colleagues?
I have a dispatch question. How mechanically do calls get put through to Eastchester EMS? Does 911, does that typically go to the police department first and they refer to you? How does that transition work mechanically?
Yeah, I really wish I had a whiteboard, but I'm going to explain it without a whiteboard right now. Okay, so it depends. It depends where you call from. Now, if Mayor Marvin had a landline right where she is now and calls 911, it's going to go to Bronxville Police Department. Not just because she's in this building, but because it's a landline and it has an actual geographic location. So it would go to Bronxville Police Department. They would ask, "What is your emergency?" You would articulate the emergency. They would then send it to our dispatch center called 60 Control, which is Westchester County Fireground Communications, which is up in Valhalla. They then send out the tones to Eastchester EMS or any other service that is needed based on the initial triage, what was going on, what was the emergency. Now, if you call from a cell phone and we're standing out on the intersection, that's going to go to New York State Police. They're going to do the same function that Bronxville Police did. They're going to initially ask what's going on, is it a police, fire, EMS matter, and then they're going to transfer it, again, to 60 Control, where then we would get toned down.
No, that's great. I appreciate the clarification.
Always know your address when you call 911.
I've got a quick question. First of all, and thank you for all your hard work you do on behalf of town of Eastchester and particularly the village of Bronxville as well. What hospital do you find yourselves using the most when you take patients to the hospital? Are you doing it by location? I mean, obviously we have Lawrence Hospital, NYP Lawrence Hospital here in the village.
So we do several qualifiers. On the lower acuity, we ask the patient, okay, where would you like to go? And based on the call volume, how busy the district is at that time, and the distance to the hospital, we try to make that as comfortable as possible. We try to meet their needs. So if they say, hey, we want to go to White Plains, but we're in Bronxville, if we have other ambulances in quarters and they're not on other calls, we'll go to White Plains. However, if, God forbid, someone's in cardiac arrest right outside, you always go to the nearest facility, and let's say we'll go to Lawrence, and then if they need to be transferred for other forms of care, they'll be transferred down the line. One more option. If someone falls off a ladder, they're cleaning the gutters on their house, they fall 20 feet. Okay, that's a trauma. Okay, so they endured some sort of physical trauma. So we got to go to a trauma center, a specialty, a level 1 trauma center. So we'll either go to Jacoby, because we're in Bronxville, Jacoby's the closest in the Bronx, or we can go to the Westchester Medical Center, shooting up the Sprainer or the Bronx River, especially if we're in the north end of Eastchester. So there's several factors. If it's a low acuity, we can ask and see how the day's going. If it's a higher acuity, you go to the specialty center, and if it's extremely critical, meaning an extremely unstable patient, we go to the closest facility.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And aren't there issues, though, if it's a sort of, I'm trying to think of a better word, but a mental illness call?
Yes.
You have to go, isn't Mount Vernon the closest hospital with those services?
So Mount Vernon is in fact the closest hospital, but we have the option to go between Mount Vernon as well as White Plains. They both have psychiatric care within their
They do.
emergency department. That's the qualifier that we need for the
That's what I
emotionally disturbed person.
Okay.
Do you see the type of responses changing over the next year or two? Like, you know, how do you see things evolving as kind of we move past COVID and?
Yeah, I see the type of responses changing not by the mechanism of the response, but by the agencies that are doing the responding. I see that we're looking, as you look at the need for EMS increasing, yet the financial bandwidth of EMS agencies kind of shrinking down, especially as medical insurance changes. I do see the lack of staffing becoming an issue because you're not able to adequately staff. I'm not saying that's an issue that Eastchester is having, because it's not, because we have a great group of volunteers as well as paid staff, a good combination. But we're tight. We're number by number, dollar by dollar. So if we're tight, imagine a fully paid agency. They're even tighter. So I do see the responses changing because of the lack of resources, not because of the personnel.
Thank you.
I just have one more comment. I mean, again, well, I echo the comments of all the trustees. You guys, gals, just are so essential to the greater, Bronxville, greater Eastchester community. And I hope that you'll keep us alert, as you do your annual fundraising drives. I think that, again, just for people who may be watching this broadcast on cable, I mean, it's the Eastchester Volunteer ambulance service, and everyone would be paying higher taxes if you guys weren't volunteering your services. And I'm sure a lot of residents, it's worth remembering that you are a volunteer, that you do accept contributions. And
we accept them.
Yeah.
Open arms.
What's your email address?
So
Or your website address?
Our website is www.eastchesterems.com. You can donate right there. We also send out mailers twice a year. And if you have any questions, just email info@eastchesterems.com, and I'm glad to help with it. On that very note, it's surprising to see, because we're so busy going in and out of Lawrence with so many ambulances day in, day out all the time. People forget, oh my God, this is a volunteer agency. Right. These people are doing this on their own time, and they're doing it not a part of the tax district. You see the fire truck responding, you see the police car responding, everyone assumes, which is fair to assume, the ambulance comes with it.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. So it's important to remind people, hey, Bronxville's a beautiful town. People are so excited to volunteer for Eastchester EMS. Remember, it's a volunteer agency, and they accept your donation.
And it's eastchesterems.com, or is it .org?
.com.
.com, eastchesterems.com. Okay, great. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Trustee Knapp had the great question to thank you, to have the whole community thank you. Are you going to march in our Memorial Day parade?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes.
That will get the word out even more, and have a sign that says donations accepted.
Yeah, time for us to call Sam signs.
Yeah.
But that was a great recap. But I think Trustee Frederick said it best. We also have you here to get our thanks and send it back to everybody, because it is unbelievable that you're a volunteer. And I agree with you. Everyone thinks police, fire, ambulance are in their tax bill, and there's not a penny in their tax bill for what you do for us. So thank you, and we'll see you on Memorial Day.
Thank you so much. I'm going to leave my business cards right here for you guys if you need to contact me, ever have any questions.
Perfect.
If you need a ride to the hospital.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Be
Thank
safe.
you.
Thank you,
so
Max.
much.
Bye, Mayor.
Oh, bye-bye. And now I think it's only fitting, since the next presentation is a summary presentation of the greenhouse gas emissions report. And Trustee Knapp, would you like to give a little background on the report, the committee? And we have two members here.
Okay, great, thank you. The Village of Bronxville joined the New York State Climate Smart Communities program, I believe in February 2021. A task force was created. Many members of the Green Committee were on that task force. The task force is coordinated by Stephen Shallow. And one of the first action items that it identified as being particularly high priority was completing an inventory of municipal greenhouse gas emissions. And I have to say, Carol, I'm sure, who very modestly put her name in the middle of the credits and acknowledgements in the second page, really has been the guiding force, I would say, behind the creation of this report. And I know, Susan, Cody, you've helped. Okay. But, you know, the amount of facts that were needed to be gathered and that were not easily forthcoming, the analysis that had to be done, the models that had to be created that were not at all self-evident, I would say. Just hearing your reports, Carol, every month it was a real labor of time, of passion, of intensity, of ingenuity. I know Stephen helped get a lot of the facts out, but your ability to pull it all together, I think, was invaluable. So I want to thank you all, and you, Carol, so much for putting this report together. It's really going to be so important to the village now and as a benchmark for our work going forward.
Hey, Carol, do you want to come up and just talk about it? And just for the public, this is how much work she did. This was not 2 or 3 pages. It's extraordinary what you did.
It's 26 pages.
20, okay.
Single-spaced.
Well, you know, I'm an academic, so let me just start by saying I'm not a climate scientist. And I had to learn all this, but it was great to keep my mind young and learn. And I am a researcher. I was a medical researcher. And I still do some work for NIH. And I really knew about data and how to approach this and how to evaluate data. So that's very helpful when you're working on something like this. So I'm going to make a few comments about, you know, why we did it and kind of the framing of it. And then I'll point out the highlights, and then you should feel free to ask me any questions. Why did we do this? Well, you know, I'm not a climate scientist, but, you know, in the back of my mind, we need to be worried about climate. But how do we get our arms around it? How do we really understand it? What can we do about it? And we can get discouraged, and that's why I handed this out. This was a April 3rd, 2022 illustration in the New York Times, an article saying we should have hope about climate change because we've actually made a lot of progress. If you see the top bar, it says we would be way up here if we haven't already been doing things like increasing gasoline miles per hour, home energy audits and things like that, some conversion, not enough, to solar and wind and so forth. And you bring it down to what the current policy level is. This is what we've been kind of doing. We do what we think we can do. We figure out things. We do it as it comes along. But that still is going to get us to 3 degrees or more warming over time, which is pretty dangerous for our climate. And just think about a Hurricane Ida, you know, every 6 months. That's going to be hard to survive.
And just to clarify, you're talking 3 degrees Celsius.
Celsius,
not
yes.
Fahrenheit.
Not Fahrenheit, right. Fahrenheit is, you multiply this by 1.7 or so. But the bad news is New York State itself is already warmed over 1 degree Celsius. And part of it is that northern climates are warming faster. So we almost have less room in the northern climates than closer to the equator just because we're warming faster. So the pledged line here is the Paris Climate Agreement. And the desirable to really prevent the worst catastrophes is way down here. And so what we have to begin to think of is how can we get down closer to that blue line? We might not quite make it, but we've really got to frame what we're trying to do because it's accelerating. And we can already see that in our own lives. What the changes in the climate and the risk are accelerating, which is going to be difficult in many ways for us in terms of health, physical structure, air pollution, even things like new diseases. Think of Zika and dengue fever. The warmer we get, we're going to start getting those tropical diseases up here. We don't kind of want to see those if we can avoid it. So that's kind of part of why we're doing this. Let's, figure out how much we can learn that we can be effective. So New York State has actually been pretty progressive, and you know that there's a Climate Act from 1990, and they've set really specific goals. And I will say the goals are confusing because they have different starting points, and they have different ending points, and so forth. So you need to be very clear about where you're starting, where you're trying to get to, and how much you're trying to cut back on emissions. The important thing for Bronxville is that local communities really have the most power to change climate in the sense of local communities is where most of the action is. And this in terms of their own operations, you can control your own operations, presumably the federal government can too, but that's a little messier. But things like traffic, building codes, land use regulation, those are all local. And so this organization that we also joined, thanks to the trustees, called ICLEI, and I'm going to tell you what that means, because I'm thinking like, why would they keep this weird name? I don't even know what it means. It means International Consortium on Local Environmental Initiatives. And it was started 30 years ago out of some UN activity around cities who wanted to start addressing climate because they were seeing the federal organizations not doing enough. And with this idea that, local communities can do a lot more than perhaps we need national policy, of course, and that's helping, but local communities have a lot of control on improving climate, and so that's framework is important. Now, we were able to join ICLEI as a village, and that was very important because it allowed me not to have to use my slide rule or an engineering calculator to come up with all these greenhouse gas emission numbers. I could have probably done it, but it would have been another year if I had to do each calculation. But what it allowed us to do is have access to their software. And I will say, they will do one of these reports for a community. It depends on size, but I think they did one for Bedford, and it was $20,000. So I'm going to have a chit out for, but at any rate, so they have a framework that helps communities do this, and thankfully they do, because it's very complicated and not everybody's a climate scientist. So what it defines is the basic elements that go into it. The software program does the calculations, and the important part of it is it's a data-driven process. So we don't have to guess, what if we do this or do that or do something else? We could have real numbers about what impact we might be having with climate initiatives or energy efficiency initiatives and so forth. And so that's what's so nice about this program. So let me briefly tell you what we did is we collected utility bills. Susan and I, they were upside down, sideways, we're going, hundreds of pages. We picked a base year, 2018, and that 2018 base year has some scientific merit in terms of the international change over time. And so we collected utility bills for all the buildings. Stephen worked on getting a fleet inventory, so every vehicle, every trailer, every trash truck, their age, their odometer readings, how many, and we figured out miles per gallon, and then Susan actually helped figure out for 2018 how many miles they might have driven and how much diesel or gasoline they might have consumed. The other thing we did, which many communities didn't do, but I'm a scientist, so I want to kind of dot every I, is that we did a survey, an anonymous survey of employees in Village Hall about their commute, because that's also a factor in terms of the way employees commute to work if they're all, driving gas guzzlers and so forth. And, bigger institutions often have policies to encourage carpooling, or they give out bus passes or Metro North, whatever. It's not to say that this community has to do that, but it's just a factor to think and understand, how much emissions are being produced by people just commuting. And you will see in the report, a good quarter of the workforce is commuting more than 30 miles round trip in a car. So, that's a big emission factor, and it's not that you would say to them you can't do that, but it's just something to keep in mind, and hopefully over time people will gradually be on their own getting electric vehicles and so forth that will reduce that. So page 5 and page 24 are the two highlights. Page 5 is a graphic that shows the proportions of the major factors that contributed to greenhouse gas for Bronxville. And the largest for most communities tends to be buildings and facilities operations. So it's the heat, electric, and so forth for Village Hall, the library. We had a great cooperation from Eastchester, and they gave us their firehouse data, so that's included. And that was 290 megaton CO2 equivalents. So this equivalent thing means that it makes CO2 an easier figure, but it includes nitrous oxide and methane and the other greenhouse gases that are actually produced. So, and that's what the software program does. It kind of puts them all into one figure so it's comparable. So the largest is the building operations. The second is street lighting and outdoor lighting, which is 181 megatons, and I'll talk about that in a minute because that's a big figure. The third is the employee commute was pretty big as well, 161 megatons. And what we did is we didn't get a response from all 100 employees, but we got a sample and then we extrapolated it to all 100 employees, factoring in full-time, part-time, and so forth. And there are a few employees that commute solely by Metro North, who walk and so forth. So it wasn't everybody driving, but most people were driving. And finally, the vehicle fleet was only 121 megatons, representing 17%, and that's very actually parsimonious, because the first thing Jim started wheels going, well, how does this compare to other people? How do we even interpret this? And that's the same thing I did. So what did I do? I went to other communities that have done these and that have publicly posted their municipal inventories and said, well, how do we compare? So for example, Hastings and Ardsley, Croton, somewhat similar population and so forth, although all of them obviously are bigger geographically. And I looked at their figures, and also they may have used slightly different base years, but our building operations were somewhat lower than these other, like Ardsley and Hastings. And it may have been because of the geothermal here, that this building is very energy efficient. I will say the firehouse is the least efficient of all the buildings, so it may just be that it's older and not hasn't had the kind of attention paid to it. Our fleet was the lowest, so kudos to Jim, who says he walks everywhere, and we don't have a lot of cars that go home with people and so forth. But our street lighting was amongst the highest. Our street and outdoor lighting was amongst the highest. So that kind of rings a little bit of a bell. And I will say, our street lighting is, 181 megatons carbon in a year. Ardsley's was 45 and Hastings was 75. So huge differences. So what are they doing that we aren't doing? Gives you some clues. Beacon did start very early. The Climate Smart Communities program started in 2016, and the Clean Energies communities started even before that. Beacon has a greenhouse gas inventory up that said in 2012, their street lighting was 253 megatons of carbon. But they changed everything to LEDs in 2018, and in 2018, their figure was 37 megatons. So you can see this huge decrease that seems even more than possible. I was reading at NYSERDA that it's at least 65% reduction if all the street lighting is LEDs. But anyway, that's something to think forward. So just by way of thinking, how do we think about this? So now we have some data. We can compare a few of the elements to other communities. We can see where we're doing well and maybe there are savings and reductions. These will be financial as well as in carbon pollution, depending on what we tackle. So this is just the facts, and what we would do with this going forward would be the software does have some modeling there where we can project growth, we can set a target reduction, we can put in LED changes, we can put in police vehicles converted to electric, and we can try on this modeling to see what gives us both reductions. But the idea is now we have data from 2018 as a base year, and we can pick some actions and see how far we can get. I did kind of a back of an envelope thing for Jim, and I got us to 44% reduction by 2030 by LEDs, some electric vehicles, and maybe some more energy efficiency. So we could probably make a big difference, and we do have 8 years. So the goal, this is why you benchmark. So the other thing is, why is 1.5 degrees Celsius so important? And that's, I'm not being a climate scientist, I'm going like, why is that the big figure? And it's really basically that we're approaching it now, and we see the climate impacts now. And so the fear is, it's almost like a earthquake scale. Every little bit gets you so much worse. And so we, as a world, probably won't make that 1.5. The people, scientists are saying that, but we've got to get as close as possible because the risks in terms of, you know, infrastructure and health and costs and all that are really going to be pretty high, and it's going to affect agriculture and food and, you know, all sorts of health impacts and everything. So, so the idea is let's get as far as we can, and how do we figure that out? Now we have some data. So going forward, that would be the process maybe over the next 6 to 8 months or year, and maybe by, you know, quote unquote budget time next year or something, we'd have a plan. But the idea is then to come up with a plan. What would the village want to try to tackle? The other thing is the village is already making changes. The food scrap program, I know there's, you know, various kinds of things going on. So what this report should be repeated, you know, redone, maybe using 2023 data, which would be 5 years, and in early 24, and we would look and see, well, what did we do starting, because we've already made changes since 2018, I'm sure. So we would, you know, 2023 data might show a 10% reduction. Then how do we keep pushing that until we get to a reasonably large reduction by 2030, which is, you know, one of the main goals. So I will leave it there.
I think you'll be pleased with us in our capital program. We have a line. How much is it for the LED, Jim?
Yeah, so for this year, 30,000. So, and essentially, and that the lighting doesn't surprise me, but yes, we'll convert all our remaining lighting fixtures in 3 years over to LED. And the reason we did not, of course, as the board knows, is because even though we did all the downtown, we were doing the residential areas systematically, because what other communities did was they jumped on the gun with LED, but they put a very cold fixture in
Yeah.
that, so instead, and the mayor, you know this well, because we drove around late at night, taking pictures and measuring foot candles of LEDs in other residential areas, because what other places ended up doing, they put the LEDs in really early when the technology was not as good, and what they had was some people who were complaining about fixtures that were too cold. It was very bright, very bluish. So we found the right Cree fixture that's got a warmth that still works for a home with less of a setback, but still, you know, you want to preserve the residential character of the neighborhood is the point. So, but anyway, yeah, so we should, on your notes, we should be done with that within 4 years. So the 30,000 will easily allow us to get over 100 LED of those Cree fixtures this year installed in the residential.
Because Jim is right, we actually, in some ways, jumped into the LED early, and the technology got better so quickly that we put the brakes on, because the residents that we put these lights, they were not happy. And so we thought, we watched how much better they were getting so quickly. So that's been on our radar, and we're going to get that done, is the answer.
That's great. And, you know, the technology it's evolving rapidly.
Yeah.
Even like solar, they now have solar like cellophane that goes on windows. I mean, there are just so many things coming online, thankfully,
Yeah.
exponentially, that will make it easier
Right.
to really convert.
'Cause the hard part is, you know, in a community like this, the lights are on top of people's bedrooms, and we're each, you know, very close to each other. So we got a lot of feedback when we first tried to put them in the residential, but there's a lot better out there. We drove around everywhere trying to see who had the good ones, who had the bad
No,
ones.
I
so.
understand, and I was on a condo board where we were spending a fortune for we had roads and we had lighting, and finally all our lighting was failing, and we had to bite the bullet, and, you know, everyone was upset, and we had a big capital, allocation, and we saved so much money.
Yeah.
It paid for itself in like 18 months to 2 years, and we were flabbergasted. But we did go through the same thing,
Yeah.
How do we make the lights attractive and shading and not,
Right.
getting into people's windows too much and so forth. But
No. But no, we're committed to that. And,
I think this is great.
and to your point, when we did geothermal, 14 years ago, I think, we got our money back so fast. It was kind of staggering how quickly. Yeah. Any questions, trustees?
I was just going to say, once again,
Yeah.
just an amazing presentation. Your work, or the committee's work on the leaf blower, set such a high standard, and now here you are meeting it again. It's just terrific work. One thing that the mayor has talked about, and we've talked about a little bit on the board, is more stuff about trees, either a tree ordinance or possible programs to encourage residents to plant trees, or plant trees on village right-of-ways. And so all I would say is usually, you as an associate at a law firm, they always used to say, it's like you just finished eating a pie-eating contest, and your reward is more pie.
Yeah.
But I imagine that you're just going to keep getting more pie thrown in your direction as long as you keep producing this kind of work. Just terrific.
Well, we do have a community-wide report I'm already working on, which is one of the other climate communities goals. So it's a little bit different, but hopefully that will be done in about a month, and we'll have that one.
Maybe you could just mention that a little bit and how it fits in with this one.
Well, the community-wide one takes information that tries to estimate the entire consumption for the entire village of electricity, natural gas, vehicle miles traveled, all that kind of stuff. And again, the idea is some communities are trying to do community solar and community aggregation, and there's broader implications. I think there's one community I heard about at a conservation conference where a lot of the merchants got together and they rent their rooftops to a solar company. So they're producing solar right in their village that, again, counts in offsetting these greenhouse gases, and having more locally produced solar and adding to the clean energy bank with more solar is an important action as well. So it will give us a sense of the community-wide use of energy, and then that'll be have to be a broader, obviously, community-wide discussion around what Bronxville would like to do. Part of that, though, I think, is also building enforcement, and we've already done an upgraded solar ordinance, and it's kind of all those bits and pieces where you get more people involved, and this is a kind of a privileged community, and we should be doing what we can do. It's not individual homeowners should be doing it. I'm on live in a co-op, uses heating oil. We don't have any air conditioning. I'm really going to start working with my co-op board. We've got a plan down the road. We've got to convert to either geothermal or some of these heat pump systems, because, people know about them. There was a fire because someone was plugging in a window air conditioner the wrong way, or a portable air conditioner. Those things are going to happen more because we are going to have more hot days. That's what's going to happen. And we're going to need it. Maybe we didn't need it 20 years ago, but a lot of these things. So community-wide, there are going to be issues. So the community-wide report will just, again, benchmark that, and then there'll be models that we can use for planning and going forward with community actions.
I would just like to add that we're very lucky to have smart, caring, industrious residents in this village that care so much. And thanks to you, in your committee, Susan, and everybody on your committee for all the work you do. And this was an amazing report and a great baseline for us to start and then to benchmark off of. So thank you.
Thank you.
And you have a great proponent in Stephen Shallow in the building. So we've got a good, Stephen really prompts me to do things. So we've got an advocate right in-house. So.
Right. He's done a lot of the
yeah.
itty-gritty, and we had this wonderful intern from SUNY Albany.
Oh,
who
yes. Yep.
crunched a lot of the numbers, which was really helpful, along with Susan. Susan did some of them, because then I didn't have to take off those utility bills and create spreadsheets for everything. I could kind of do the higher level stuff. So that turned out to be very helpful, and they're very eager to provide more student assistance, and I said, we'll take it.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, well,
Thank you.
Thank you, and I think Bill Fredericks is correct, though. Don't answer your phone.
I know.
More pie is coming.
More pie.
And more pie.
Well, unfortunately, Pelham is already after me to help them, and I'm going like,
The way,
Increase your rates for them.
Right, exactly, right. 2 beers instead of 1.
2 pies.
thank you.
Carol. Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, now we go to the mayor's report. And, I have to say before I talk about any activities.
Yeah, let's.
We could just mention this could be posted on the website.
What? Oh, I should mention, that's right, that the operations greenhouse gas emissions, the entire document's going to be posted on the village website. And it's fascinating, and it's a very easy read for somebody like me. So, but on a very somber note, before I even start talking about other activities, I want to just speak on behalf of all my colleagues up here that this past Friday night, a pedestrian was hit by a car right out front here at Village Hall and was taken to Westchester Medical Center and passed away that evening from her injuries. And I just want to send to her family, her friends, our sincerest sympathies for what happened. Life is very fragile, so, and again, to her family, we all are thinking of you. On more village, more less important notes, we have, I think, a very ambitious and unprecedented capital projects plan, which I'm really pleased with. It covers so much more than parking and curbs, and it touches virtually, I looked up every corner of the village, Sagamore Park, traffic signals, Phase 3 and the water sewer system, LED lights. We're kind of following, we talked about in our work session that I often go back to the comprehensive plan, and 85% of the villagers who responded said, please maintain the village and just upgrade our resources, both natural and structural. And I think this capital projects plan is an answer to your request. So I'll probably write about it in the coming weeks, just so you know what we're doing in what neighborhoods. We had 2 wonderful drives. One for prom dresses. That was an effort between our police department and the Yonkers Police Department. And Yonkers reported, frankly, thanks to Bronxville, they got enough dresses so that every young woman who needed one got a dress for her prom. And our food drive, which we did in conjunction with our Congressman, Jamal Bowman, they were overwhelmed by the quantity of food that was collected just in 5 days at Village Hall. And it all went to Feed Westchester, who then parcels it out to the neediest people. So just thank you. I'm always amazed at the generosity of the people here. I just have to share one story because it lives with me. A young man, late 20s, I was out there early putting up my sign that said food drive, and of course it was just he and he said kind of, hi, what are you doing? And I said, we're having a food drive. And he said, in Bronxville? Like, and I said, no, for other people, because I said, believe it or not, you live in a county, 3rd richest in the country, and 1 in 6 people are food insufficient. So he looked at me, we chatted, he left. A half hour later, he came back and he had gone to the Acme Market and filled a bag with food. And this is just a young man. So I thanked him, and I said I thanked his mother, too. She
Raised him well.
She raised a good boy. But wow, that just encapsulates the kindness of people. I think in our wonderful online paper, they mentioned, I love when Sarah, the editor, talks about what's going on, and the repair on the West Side Circle, which she featured one week, is done, and we put it back, and we now have another beautiful shed hiding all the ugly water and electrical, because that was taken out by a large truck one evening. So if you go over there, it's thanks to our in-house DPW gentlemen who are just so handy. And then Memorial Day events. The Sunday, the 29th, 7 p.m., Bronxville School was gracious enough giving the auditorium. The veterans from all 3 communities are going to have a big event over at the school. So I urge you to come, and have to say a huge thank you to the veterans in the area, because they know it's our 100th parade in Bronxville, and they are all coming. And another wonderful thing, all of our colleagues from Tuckahoe are marching with us, and I think virtually all of our colleagues from Eastchester are coming to support us. So kind of my feeling, this is kind of what government should be about, nonpartisan partnerships. And so thanks to all of them for just being partners with us. And we're honoring 2 of the finest citizens, Vicki and Cy Ford, who lived in the village for over 50 years and volunteered for virtually every organization town-wide. Vicki was on boards in Tuckahoe, Cy in Eastchester. So we couldn't have better grand marshals. So we just hope everyone comes out. That's the 31st, correct? At 9 a.m.? And it starts over by the train station, Leonard Morange Circle.
Actually, the 30th, rather.
Oh, 30th,
Yep.
sorry, 30th.
At 9 o'clock
9
sharp.
a.m.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
And then I'm just going to end because Trustee Behrens has been a huge supporter of the Bronxville Beautification Council. And if you want to mention, they have an event.
Yes, so the Bronxville Beautification Council, which is a great organization in our town, is holding its annual garden party on Sunday, June 5th at 4 p.m. It's their fundraiser, and we would want you all please to sign up for the event and come. They'll give you the location based on your sign up, after you've signed up. But the BBC just does tremendous work for our village in keeping it beautiful and clean and weeding and mulching and planting flowers. So the funds are used to make our village beautiful, and we all love that. So please come out and support them. And then, Mayor, I've got a couple of other things I wanted to add. We, Jim and I were part of the Village Cleanup Day on Saturday, April 23rd, to coincide with Earth Day. And I just wanted to thank all the volunteers in the village that came out to support this event to help clean up our village. And I had a few, this is my second year in a row doing it, I have a few observations. You know, the village is generally very clean, thanks to the DPW and the thoughtfulness of our residents. But along the main arteries, such as Midland, Pondfield, and White Plains, there is quite a bit of litter on the streets and some hidden in the sidewalks. It's a lot of discarded cigarette butts, it's bottles and cans, it's lunch bags, and it's people walking and throwing stuff out or in their cars and throwing stuff out. And, you know, this stuff does not disintegrate on its own. It just sits there, and I think we just have to remind ourselves in the village that it's really important not to litter. Our village is so beautiful, and we just want to keep it as beautiful as possible. And please try to save your litter for a garbage can and dispose it in a proper location, rather than on the street or on the sidewalks or in the bushes. So that's what I wanted to add about that. And then I just had one last thing, if you wouldn't mind. We had coffee with a cop on Wednesday, April 27th. The police department hosted it, and Claudio, we did it in front of Park Place. They did it in front of Park Place, and Claudio was very graciously donated the coffee and the bagels. There were 9 members of the police department there, which was really incredible. Trustee Knapp, obviously, village administrator Jim, myself, and assistant village administrator Steve Shallow was there. And there was a lot of good, friendly conversation with residents, and it just really goes to reinforce how open and welcoming our police department is in this town, and there were a lot of friendly conversations. So just hats off for them for hosting this. So that was all I had.
Terrific. Any other trustee? I know you were so involved with the Greens, so Bill Fredericks, anything this month that...
No, other than that, I think all the trustees got the email from the police chief showing a picture of the police doing an escort to school, I think it was, as a raffle prize. And it was just some great pictures of seeing 2 of our officers, I guess, who gave a police escort to one of our younger citizens to school, and I think they looked as if they had a great time, and I think the police officers looked as if they had just as great a time as well. And I won't mention the individual's name, but I recently just had a conversation with one of our police officers talking about how they'd come to Bronxville from a more urban city environment, and just the difference in feeling that they were part of a community here. And I like to think that that's a two-way street, that our residents view our police officers as part of our community. And we've had some new hires, and I think we've all gotten very good feedback about our new hires. And so if you see a policeman on the street and it looks like it's a new face, you can go up and introduce yourself to them. But that's the only comment I have to add to today's meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. And I I wanted to mention Deputy Mayor Underhill is away this week, so that's why he is not here. All right, on to the village administrator's report. Mr. Palmer, we
know what?
kind of took everything from
We've
you.
covered so much already, and we've had a lot of presentations. We'll just move right into new business. And I'll just say, yes, so
Approval of the minutes.
well, right, we're gonna, right, no, but I was just gonna say, right, and much of the new business is related to the resolutions for all the capital projects, and the mayor's referring to almost $2 million worth of capital projects for the year, which we are in the process of absolutely getting well underway on now. So I look at that list and I am exhausted about it, because it does cover everything from the infrastructure to even a planning study to review the downtown outdoor dining options. So and then I'll just say, of course, this excludes all the Con Ed gas projects, which will be taking place over the summer. And Steve and I will be ramping up with the Con Ed team very soon, so that they can get started on what they have to as soon as school gets out, so to make it count. Yep.
All righty, so we go, I need approval of a motion to approve 3 sets of minutes, one from the work session of April 11th, one from the annual meeting of April 11th, and then one from the special meeting that we had on April 25th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Again, a great set of minutes from Mary Ann. All right, Mr. Palmer, we're appointing a new assessor, because our incredible assessor, Jerry Iagallo, who we accepted it's really his retirement. And I just have to say, having worked with Jerry for a decade, he just took our tax rolls and revolutionized what we're doing. And just to give you an idea, when I first came here, we had small claims of above about 350 a year, which was similar to communities like ours. And this year we had 34. And that gives you an idea of what kind of, what he did for the village. And just incredibly talented gentleman. And we just wish him well. And he deserves to retire. So, but would you like to mention, because we are going to appoint someone who worked with him and knows the village well?
Yes, so before you is simply, well, this is Mayor, your appointment with the approval of the board,
Right.
The appointment of Martin Heimbachel to serve as assessor, and be for a term of 1 year, as is noted in New York State Village Law. And yes, Mark, yeah, and I echo your sentiments on Jerry. What a great career. Quite frankly, it's his second retirement, but I definitely wish him well, and he just knows the numbers in the community so well. But he, knowing that he was going to be transitioning sooner or later, he did bring Mark Heimbachel on board, and Mark is an appraiser by trade. He served as an assistant assessor for the city of Rye, and then for the past couple of decades, he's been assessor for the town and village of Harrison. So, and then, believe it or not, for over 8 months, he's been working by Jerry's side, learning all the aspects of Jerry's database that he's been using. So, Jerry leaves us in real great hands with Mark, and yeah, we're real excited to bring Mark on board.
So do I have a motion to appoint Mark?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then we have another new employee.
Yes, yes, so the next appointment is for, resolution is for the appointment of a parking office manager. As the board knows, Margaret Parr took another opportunity with the village of Dobbs Ferry, but we were able to find a great candidate, Janine Marsigliano, from New City, and she was also on the parking office manager list, and really has an impressive background of specifically addressing what she's going to be doing with the parking permits. And in fact, she worked both in the public sector and the private sector, including developing these parking permit systems for other communities, and working for, anyway, the companies that either develop the parking permits or do the enforcement aspects. So she understands all aspects of the parking management systems, which is real positive, and she was introduced to the other staff and Stephen, who's been holding the parking permit system down. So she starts next week, so we've already started to include her on emails. So we have big hopes for her, right? Yep. To keep that same level of service that residents have expected. And of course, you know, her expertise with software is very important because we're continuing that transition to the online permitting system. We did it for all the 24-hour reserve permits, but now we're moving into those next phases. So hopefully by the fall, all the commuters will also be doing their permits online. So anyway, if you could just approve that appointment letter that I sent out.
Do I have a motion to approve the employment?
And just to clarify, this is a replacement of an existing position.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
good point. And this is the appointment of Janine Marsigliano. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and the next item is the award of contract 2022-01, and this is the signal and pedestrian improvements for the two intersections right here over at Midland and Pondfield, and then also Gramerton and Pondfield. Both of those projects were scoped out and bid together. There was one low bidder, and this is also consistent with the capital project that you approved back on April 25th for this work, and the work that was designed by WSP Engineering prior to that. So again, one bid that was issued in March, one recipient, Verde Electrical Contracting. That bid has been reviewed. I've had conference calls with Verde and the consulting engineer to review their estimate. So if you would award that contract to the one low bidder, and that amount is also identified here, was $1,189,974.40, and then authorized me to execute a contract with Verde to proceed with that work. And I should just emphasize, as I had provided to you on our meeting last month, this capital project that you had approved excludes. It's going to be through the issuance of debt or existing capital monies, but not using the CDBG funds.
Yeah, so this has no relationship to perhaps the $75,000 that we get from the county, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
We've since notified the county that we will not be utilizing the money for this project, due in large part that it's the county has yet to receive any contracts from the federal government, and that
The money isn't there
the
yet.
money isn't there, and we couldn't award it this time. It's going to be quite a lengthy process for that. But our hope is that we would then, and I've been in touch with the county on that, be able to apply the $75,000 toward a project on the west side, and that was included in the capital plan too. So. Yeah.
So the scope of the work is, was bid on. The design elements are still to be finalized?
Nope, the design is all complete. That was done earlier in the year, designed by WSP.
I know we saw one iteration. Do we see the final?
Yes,
one?
yes, that was circulated to all of you. New overhead signals at both locations, new crosswalks, new curbing, new handicap drop curbs. In the case of the Gramerton intersection, also an additional teardrop lighting fixture. to match the lighting fixtures over at this intersection. Yes.
And that will start this summer, some of the work.
Right, and so I've been in touch with the contractor since March to start ordering those, to start ordering the items, given that some have significant lead times. But our hope is that much of the work will be able to be done when school is out. That's been the plan.
All righty, so do I have a motion to award this contract?
So moved.
And a second.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, now all the other items relate to, since you had previously approved the capital projects, this is the actual environmental compliance resolutions along with the actual specific bond language. And the treasurer was kind enough to, in working on this over the past week with bond counsel, group these by the life of the project, since that's the way it has to be done. So I did provide one updated resolution, which is on your desk, and that's simply that bond counsel requires that we do two separate environmental compliance resolutions or do a separate one for the vehicle charging station, and then an additional environmental compliance resolution for the parking kiosk for the Parkway Road and the studies. And for the public's edification, all these projects, we do the environmental compliance, which means that we evaluate them as we're required to under SECRET, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. However, these projects are all considered type 2. There's no need to complete environmental assessment forms on these. And I should state also that the Midland Pondfield signalization is also considered a type 2. So with that being said, if we could first have the board approve the environmental compliance resolution that for the vehicle charging stations.
All right, do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
And a second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and then the second next environmental compliance resolution is for the parking kiosk and also the other studies that we're going to be funding through debt service, which is the downtown parking study, the complete streets study, and then, as I said, the parking pay stations, that these are also all type 2 and have been evaluated under seeker.
All right, do I have a motion to move this one? Big project.
So moved.
And a second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Can
Okay.
I just say, though, no matter what strange hour I came in and out of Village Hall, Lori was here working on these. These take an awful lot of effort, and the
Packages are very thick.
oh my gosh, and the need for the perfection in these things. And, I would come in, odd hours early in the morning and then not come back till late, and she was still sitting at her desk. So huge thank you, because I watched how hard these were to get all of these together. So
Yeah, and the good news is, yes, Lori is great at this, and Randy Mayer is not with us. We know he's out west, but Randy, being bond counsel, wanted it a very specific way, and he set the standard for that.
yes, yeah, he did. All
So,
right.
okay, so then if you could approve the resolution then for the bond sale to fund both the parking kiosk, the charging stations, and also the studies.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And Mary is the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'm sorry, who made the first motion?
Helen, trustee
Got it.
Knapp.
Okay, great. Okay, and the next one is the environmental compliance resolution for the sidewalk, I call them the sidewalk improvements along Route 22. And so that would be the next scope of a project. And this is one that we've been talking about. This is the improvements, the potential sidewalk down along 22 between Dusenberry and Paddington with an alternate potentially up to South Road, a crosswalk across from Dusenberry to the vicinity of Elm Rock with rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and also new curbing in addition to the sidewalks. And again, even though you, as you had asked earlier, you approved the funding for this project, we, if we are able to get funding from another source, which is certainly, once we've completed the design and have a true cost estimate, will be our intention. In which case, if we are able to get funding, then we would simply repurpose this with another similar project of a useful life.
Is that extra piece to South Road, is that contingent on the cost?
Well, I think once we get the bids back and we look at that and we see what funding is available, then we just wanted to keep that as an alternate so you can, right, if the price happens to come in, right, very competitively, then we can, right, so that's a determination we'll make. Yep.
And I think part of the thinking was, let's just get the necessary sidewalk in that is a requirement, because the state won't build a crosswalk unless there's a crosswalk on both sides of the crosswalk.
Right.
And there isn't one on the far side. So we'll start with Paddington to Dusenberry, and then we'll, I guess, look at the next.
But yet, it was agreed that potentially going up to South Road obviously covers another whole group of neighborhoods, which would be wonderful. That too is a very dense area. What I was looking for is, right, we didn't have probable usefulness of 10-year projects, so this is the 15-year project is why we've grouped it that way. So do we have a motion on that environmental compliance resolution for Route 22 work?
So moved.
And a second.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And again,
Opposed?
considered.
Passes.
Yep, and again, considered type 2. Okay, then the next one is just the bond sale to fund those improvements.
So moved.
And I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, then we've grouped all the recreation projects together. The first is the environmental compliance resolution, and just to summarize for the public's edification, the useful life on these, Lori, I think is also 15 years, is it not? 15 years. And there's also a schedule in your packets on those. These include $312,000 worth of projects, the Sagamore Park Playground upgrades, $70,000 here in addition to $30,000 you had from a previous bond, the Bacon Wood stairway work, $10,000 towards the irrigation for the park off of Beech Tree Lane, and then a variety of different paddle court improvements. So if someone could approve that environmental compliance resolution.
Jim, can I just ask a question on the Sagamore Park? Can you just remind me what the money there is going for? It's upgrades, but do you have specific?
I'm sorry, for Sagamore Park?
Yeah.
So, right, so now we have a total of $100,000 in funding, and then we were going to do some reach out to the community, perhaps the nursery school over at Christ Church. Helen had some contacts. So essentially, it's going to be for playground equipment.
Right.
To replace the existing playground equipment. And the consensus I've heard from over the years of being up there is that everyone loves the natural wood features given the location, but what we have needs to be replaced. But so it'll be for playground equipment. Otherwise, we'll continue to maintain the mulch, and the walkway up there is in good condition. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Ellen, would you like to move that? You've worked on this.
Sure, so moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So many people use that park that this is, I mean, I get emails, nice emails just saying, please, anything you can do up there because we love that park.
Do we need to do two resolutions on this?
Yes, then if you could just do the bond, authorize the bond sale for that one then too.
So moved.
Yeah.
I'll second. Oh, you married?
No, you second.
I'll second it, or?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and then the last two, just confirming the useful life, right, and this is for the
20 years.
the award that you just did for the Midland Palmfield intersection in Palmfield to Granverton, estimated a 20-year life, approving the environmental compliance resolution for that project.
All right, would someone like to move that?
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and then the actual bond resolution.
All right, I will move that, and I need a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Okay, I
right.
think that,
That was a lot,
was
and
$2 million
I'm
worth of projects.
really excited that we're really touching every corner of the village and improving something. So, trustees, before most of our guests left tonight. We had guests earlier, but we had a long meeting, so I don't see anyone that might want to make a statement at this juncture. I think we let everyone speak earlier. So trustees, any other thoughts before I ask for a motion to close?
I just think it's appropriate to add on the record that although we went through rather efficiently all these projects, that I think anyone, again, who's watching on cable should know that all of these projects have been the subject of a lot of discussion over multiple meetings, multiple work sessions. And again, I think just thanks to Lori and Jim for putting together all the paperwork to make it work. So thanks again, Ms. Voss and Mr. Palmer.
Yep. All right. Oh, and if I could just mention, Mayor, I can't recall, had you mentioned the receipt of the letter that we received from the chamber today regarding smoking in public places, and also the previous letter that we received from Admiral Realty? I don't know if you just wanted to mention.
No, that is, thank you. That's just something the trustees are discussing, will be continued, because there is a concern from our Chamber of Commerce board and from Admiral Realty, and I think there were over 20 merchants and residents who live above some of the stores, and particularly on Palmfield Road, for us to consider a no smoking ban in the business district due to, again, back to the Green Committee, due to quality of life issues, the trash, the smoke, the fact that stores can't keep their doors open. And so, good point, Mr. Palmer. We reassure those two groups that that is a conversation that we did have and are having, and we appreciate their letters. So, thank you.
It just occurred to me when you brought up the Green Committee again, did you mention the Compost Give Back Day?
No.
And how successful that was? So that was the first
Right.
Give Back Day 2 weeks ago, I believe. Kind of something that we had emulated, that Scarsdale did to kind of be the next phase of the food scrap recycling program. So all this food scrap that get recycled, they turn to compost. So the idea was to bring back this large load of compost that was brought over to the Palumbo Place area, and residents came all day, and I think the next day too, to take back this compost and put it in their gardens and in their grass. So we have lots of it on our grass now and in our gardens, so
And I
I think it was
believe
quite
you mean
successful. I
palms.
think it really was. You were there, Stephen, did you see how?
Yes,
yeah.
I'm in.
How was it?
Did you mention?
You saw Jim?
Yep, no, it was great, and you know what, and yeah, and at that point, I was so thoughtful that Assemblywoman Amy Poland was able to join us, and but yes, a lot more bins were sold. People really appreciative. I thought it was very nice that Amy came out and put her shovel in and helped spread the word. And kudos again to the Green Committee. Maria was there, much of the time. Honestly, and even Michelle Sterling, who started the program, she considers all these like a personal thing. And since we're on that note, a little plug for the Reformed Church Nursery School. The kids were, I guess, unfortunate enough to hear me talk about the DPW building, but let me just say, all the ladies, all the girls loved they absolutely loved the DPW, and they got a wonderful tour, and I guess that was their raffle prize, and
And nobody fell asleep?
nobody fell asleep, and I know. They all just wanted to drive in the equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a beautiful, shiny new building.
Yes, it is.
Lots of big equipment.
Oh, and before then I close this meeting, I just want to announce that we have a special meeting, May 18th at 4 p.m. That will be posted just to do a little extra business we couldn't fit in tonight. And then we will convene for our regular June meeting on June 13th at 7 p.m. So those are the next two trustees' meetings. And seeing no other business, do I have a motion to close tonight's meeting?
So moved.
And a second.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, and we'll see you in either May or June or both. Thank you.
I'll take that, Mayor.